It's my honor to introduce today's dynamic trio of presenters. With us, we have Diane Sweeney, a best-selling author and internationally recognized expert on student-centered coaching. After teaching and coaching in Denver Public Schools, Diane served as a program officer at the Public Education and Business Coalition in Denver. Since then, she founded Diane Sweeney Consulting, and over the years has become a respected and highly sought-after voice in the field of coaching and professional development. In addition to speaking and consulting for schools and educational organizations, she's also designed a certification program in student-centered coaching at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she's also an instructor. We also have with us Leanna Harris. She's a co-author of best-selling Student-Centered Coaching, The Moves, The Essential Guide for Student-Centered Coaching, and Student-Centered Coaching from a Distance, all written in collaboration with Diane. Leanne has served as a staff developer as well as a school-based instructional coach across grades K through 12. Nowadays, she helps schools and districts implement student-centered coaching, basing her work on the belief that professional development for teachers is most effective when it's grounded in outcomes for student achievement. And to round out our trio, we have Julie Steele. Julie has worn many hats through her career in public education, including that of an elementary teacher and instruction specialist. In 2019, she chose to pursue a full-time career in consulting so she could have a broader impact on students and teachers around the country. Her areas of expertise include in-person and online support related to the implementation of student-centered coaching. Julie has a deeply rooted passion for continuous learning, which has fueled her to present at numerous conferences, provide professional learning for school districts around best practices and high-impact instruction, and she authors several blogs on issues of equity throughout the year. So one through line I'm sure you've picked up from hearing a little bit about our presenters is a lifelong dedication to supporting learning for every child every day. And I'm so proud to say that Corwin is the publisher of Diane, Leanna, and Julie's latest work, Moves for Launching a New Year of Student-Centered Coaching. And you're in for a treat today because you're going to get a sneak peek of that work. With that, I'll turn it over to our presenters.
Hi guys, it's Diane here, and I have to first start this conversation with a huge thank you to Corwin, because Megan, Melissa, the whole team at Corwin, our editorial team, really helped us create something that I think is pretty special and that is pretty out of the box. We did a lot of new things in this resource that we're pretty darn excited to get out in the world. It's like having a baby. You just want everyone to see the baby. And I think we are like a week away from that point. So we're excited for you all to see this resource, but more excited just to talk about our thinking as it relates to launching the year, because the reason we created this resource is because we had heard over and over again that coaches are wondering, what is my first step? How do I start the year? What's the roadmap into this new year? Because it's just such a rich opportunity. The very first few weeks of school are when we're building community and when we're building relationships and when we're setting the stage for so much coaching to come. And it feels like really, I'd say, sacred time. And so we decided to provide a way for coaches to feel supported as they navigate this first, month or 6 weeks of school. So it's very time kind of sensitive content in a sense. And we've never done that before. We've never written and this isn't really necessarily a book. It's more like kind of like similar to a playbook. We've never really written something that is so tied to sort of a certain phase in the school year. So it was a whole different way of thinking we had to do as the three of us dug in. So as we dug in, we were thinking about what then would be the phases for this work. Like, what do I do first, next, then last? How do I make sure I've thought of all the layers of beginning a year? And so what we really landed on is, and you'll get to learn a little bit more about each of these phases, but we landed on the idea that we really always have to build from a foundation of relationship, which we all know. Anyone in this group sitting here today who is a coach knows that. But the question then is, what are the moves for building relationships? How do we build relationships that aren't just friendly and resource providing, but actually relationships that set us up for deeper coaching work. So that's pretty darn exciting and very much obvious, but extended on, I'd say. And then also phase 2, thinking about how do we then make intentional decisions with the principal. So any resource around student-centered coaching we've ever published always has a very strong voice about the role of the principal in the coaching work. And that is true as well here. So what are those intentional decisions we need to be making together? And you'll learn of 3 moves in that section of this resource. And kind of what do we recommend principals and coaches get super solid on right when you're rolling back into school, which is literally right now. The messaging and marketing coaching is super fun because I'm a creative person. I mean, that's my kind of default, is to be thinking about how can I communicate this broadly? How can I take this to the school community so that everybody understands what coaching is about? And what are some strategies for that so that we're clear? And so you're going to hear a little bit more about that phase. And then lastly, we always want to be thinking about this stage of the year as literally being kind of a launching off point, which is why we use the word launching so much, because we're thinking about it as a chance to get ready for more formal coaching that will come. So our assumption we're making, and this is super important to hear today, is that you're going to not be a resource provider forever, even though you may be providing resources or be doing some of that type work, maybe in the first few weeks of school. But we want to get to that phase 4 where we're launching more formal coaching, or with student-centered coaching, that would obviously be coaching cycles. So we want to get deeper in our coaching work so we're making a measurable impact. So you'll learn a little bit more about that as well. So I'm sure you're super curious about what those moves are within each of these phases. So we're going to just kind of start discussing those. And I'm going to turn it over to Julie, who is going to jump in and share a little bit about phase 1 and the act of building relationships and what that might look like in these first few weeks of school.
I failed to unmute.
Somebody has to, you know?
Yeah, you probably saw my mouth moving. I just wanted to say I'm coming to you from the Kansas City, Missouri area, and I'm just fascinated by the locations that all of you are joining us this afternoon, and really appreciate you giving up an hour of your time to really dig into this work. We're super passionate about it, and it's exciting to see that you are too. So I wanted to ask you to do one thing. If you are a brand new coach, brand new to instructional coaching, I want you to put a number 1 in the chat. And if you are a returning coach, whether it's year 2 or year 15 for you, would you just put a 2 in the chat? I just wanted to get a sense for the audience and how many experienced coaches do we have on here and how many just brand new to this new role. And you're probably the ones that are really just ready to chomp on the bit of tell me what to do on day 1 back in my building. So it looks like we have a mix of 1s and 2s, which is really fascinating. So we had all of you in mind when we wrote this resource. We wanted it to be something that was approachable from the perspective of a brand new coach. I just left my classroom and I was really comfortable doing the job of teaching. And so I have no idea what this new role entails. But also we know that the beginning of the school year, no matter how long you've been in your position, looks and feels differently. And there's a lot of factors that go in to the drivers of that feeling of a new school year. It could be that you're in a new building. It could be that you have new administration. It could be that you have a 50% turnover in teachers, or maybe you're working in a school district or a system that has adopted a lot of new curriculum. And so there's a lot of things that create the sense of newness in a school year. And so every year as an instructional coach, you have to figure out the footing for the new year. And so no matter where you're at in your career, whether it's you're brand new or you've been doing this a while, we feel really passionate and confident that this is going to meet a need that you have. and a really timely need since the start of the school year is upon us. So we know that the foundation of education is relationships. We knew that as teachers. Students have to really trust who we are as people, and they have to have a demonstration day after day that we are interested in who they are, that we care about their success, that we are there to support them, not to judge them. And we all felt that very strongly in our classrooms. And so that's the exact same when we're going in and we're now supporting a building that's full of teachers and students. That doesn't change. Relationships is the foundation of the strength of our coaching success every single year. So, which is why we put it as the first phase. It's the easiest phase for you to walk into. I would imagine that most of you are people, right? That you enjoy working with adults. That's why you've landed in the position that you're in right now. And so we want to think about the natural ways to build relationships with people that either we have never met before, or maybe they're our old colleagues, but now I'm building this relationship from a new position. And so how do I do that? We all knew what to do on day one of school. We knew to make the name tags and to create the syllabus and, all of the things. We knew that we had to put our rooms together and all of those things. But when you come into this position as an instructional coach, there's not so much clarity in what you do on the first days. And so if you're thinking that day one, I have to know how to coach, or I have to be ready to coach, take a deep breath, because we're going to start with building relationships. And there are a number of ways that we can do that. 4 that we really focused in on talking through and giving you things to talk with your principal about are up here on the screen. The first thing that we just need you to do is be visible. We want people to recognize you if you're new. We want people to see that you're approachable, that you are willing to do whatever it takes to get the school up and running on those first few days, especially as teachers go back before students get there. So you can see that, joining meetings, offering mentoring support to new teachers are also ways that we can build relationships. But the one that I want to focus in on is supporting teachers to build classroom community. We heard in the field throughout the school year last year that engagement and behavioral problems were at an all-time, I don't know if you want to say that, all-time low for engagement, all-time high for maybe behavior management issues. And so one of the ways that we can really start creating relationships is just by having dialogue with teachers on what do you want this community to look and feel like? What is it going to look and feel like to allow all students to see that you value them and their presence in your classroom? And so with this resource, that's one of the ways that we can really dig in and partner with teachers and begin to build those relationships right away. We've got tools and artifacts that will, further develop the conversation around classroom community that you can dig into to this new resource. But, first and foremost, we have to realize that relationships are the beginning point of coaching. This is really vulnerable work that we're asking our colleagues to engage in with us. Talking about the struggles that are happening in their classroom, that learning maybe has stalled out for a group of students. Oftentimes the adults tend to place blame on themselves and they don't want to share that. And so the relationship that you build with your colleagues is extremely, extremely important. And so that's why we feel that it's the most important to start with, the most important phase to start with. And so that is laying out the foundation for the rest of the phases to go smoothly, but also so that when you are in the months of November, December, and January, you now have the space that teachers feel really safe to come to you and just ask for coaching support. I'll turn it over to Leanna to talk about the next phase, working with your principal.
All right, thank you. Following Julie's lead, I'm joining you from Denver, Colorado. So also excited to see so many of you here. And I know Julie had you put a 1 for a brand new coach and a 2 for a more experienced coach. But I know there's some people in here who are coaches. I'm going to say a shout out to my friend Penny, who's a district administrator here. If you are a school leader or a district leader, go ahead and put a 3 in the chat, because I'm guessing there's more than just her here. Yeah, several of you. So this is our space, right? That if you're familiar with our work on student-centered coaching, you know that one of our core practices is about partnering, coaches and principals partnering together. We have a deeply held belief, and we've seen from many years of experience that coaches can do really, really good work on their own, but for this work to be most impactful and most effective, it has to happen in that partnership with the school leaders. And this section of the resource really does speak to that. Now, I will say, in every single one of the moves, you're going to find a section that has some guiding questions for principals and coaches to talk about together. So in all 15 moves, there's guidance for that partnership. But in this section in particular, in this phase, this is where we get really intentional about it. And we think, what are the specific things that need to happen in order for us as a team, as a principal coach team, to get this work going in the right direction? So I want to just speak briefly about each of these 3 moves and kind of highlight a little bit in each one. The first one, establishing how you will work as a principal and coach team, is so foundational to this work. So we're talking about it as a move for launching. Really, it's a move for just doing it in general. You want to do it at this time of year, so you set yourself up for success. It's that critical. And one of the big things in this move is defining your roles. If that may sound obvious to some of you, I'm the coach and you're the principal, or vice versa, right? But what does that really mean? What are the expectations of this role? And what are the things maybe that are not part of our job? We talk a lot about principals and coaches staying in their lane, right? That we each have different roles and we need to be clear on that. So part of that move, that this 5th move in establishing how you'll work together, is really sitting down and having a conversation and saying, what things fall in your lane or your bucket, what things fall in mine, how do we make sure that we're aligned and we're in agreement on that? And then, we'll talk later about how we also let everybody else know what each of our roles are. So that's a little bit about move 5. Excuse me. In move 6, when we're thinking about how we're going to organize our coaching schedule, that's getting us into some of those brass tacks. And as coaches, we can't do that without the principal, right? The principal runs the master schedule. They oversee kind of the functioning of the school. So we need to be partnering with them. And as we said, being intentional with our school principal, so we can set this up and set ourselves up in a way that allows us to really do the work. So once we're going to do all this beginning of the year launching stuff, in a few minutes, we're going to talk about how we transition away from it. But one of the steps we have to do in order to be able to make a successful transition is to think about our coaching schedule. And there's one really interesting piece in this move that I think can sometimes get ignored, but I want to highlight because it's so valuable. And it's like a small but mighty piece, which is making your schedule public. Now, why do I say that? And why did we include that in this resource? Because transparency is really key in so many ways in this work. Maybe some of you who've already been coaches have had people wonder what exactly you do and how exactly you spend your time. And maybe they're imagining you sitting in your office eating bonbons all day when nothing could be further from the truth. So when we make our schedule public, one of the things we're doing is sending a message to our staff saying, you know what, here's how I spend my time. Here's what I do. So that piece is really key. The other thing it does is it really helps build the culture around coaching. In a different section in the resource, we talk about confidentiality and how we believe that transparency is so much of a better option to say, it's it's important to work with a coach. It's a privilege to work with a coach. We should be shouting from the rooftops that we're learners and we want to work with a coach. So when you make your schedule public, also part of what you're doing is helping to reinforce that culture, that we're all in this. This is everybody's job. We're smarter together. And smart teachers, effective teachers, every teacher works with a coach. And that's how we all best serve our students every day, by partnering with those around us to continue to grow and learn and improve our craft. Lastly, for the seventh move, being thoughtful about who you engage with first. We've talked over the years, I should say, about this work being kind of opt-in or by invitation. You've maybe heard some of that language, but really what we're working towards creating kind of an all-in culture. Like I was just saying, where this is who we are and this is what we do. Of course, we work with our coach. So as we're thinking about the beginning of the year, we want to be really intentional with our school principal and talk with them about how are we going to approach folks and how can we be strategic, and what messages does it give as we think about where we start. A lot of school principals, their go-to and kind of the gut reaction is start with the new teachers and the struggling teachers, right? That kind of almost seems obvious. We really try to push back against that and say, if that's all you do, think about the message that's giving. Think about what that says to everybody else. Oh, I don't need to work with a coach. I'm an experienced teacher. Only the weak teachers work with a coach. So I don't want to be seen as in that position. So being really strategic about getting a balance in your coaching schedule and making sure when you start the year that you're really having from the very get-go a rounded, what we call coaching roster that ensures that you're giving that message that coaching is in fact for everybody, not just the new teachers and the struggling teachers. So let's look at this quote for a minute. Diane and another colleague of ours, Ann Mosbach, wrote this, that building rich partnerships with coaches requires attention and deliberate effort. When working as a team, a principal and coach will complement, not compete with one another to accelerate student learning. So take a minute just on your own and think about the moves that we just looked at. Think about what this quote elicits for you and whether you want to write it down or just kind of meditate on it for a moment. But think about maybe some next steps, some ideas that this gets you thinking around in your own work and as you're thinking about launching your year. We'll have another minute to do that. And then I'm going to turn it over to Diane.
As we're turning it over, I saw a thumbs up. You probably didn't notice emoji popping up on the screen when you were talking about not just coaching the struggling or new teachers. So there's some love in the group coming your way when you were sharing that idea of coaching is for everyone and having a well-rounded roster. So I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So phase 3 is to get really clear on why coaching. Really get clear on what is it, why does it matter? What does it look like? What are the expectations? I think I have a funny game I always fantasize about playing, which is I'd love to just parachute into a school that has a coach, walk around and just ask teachers, tell me more about what coaching is here. Why do you have it? And just see if I hear back what the coach and principal and district leadership would want me to hear back. And there's so much baggage with coaching that there is a tendency for teachers to assume that coaching is evaluative, to assume that coaching is about fixing them, and a lot of things that we're trying to get away from. And so if we're going to get away from those things, well, we better get clear on our message. And so that's where we're transitioning to. So you can kind of see the build here. Relationships to really clear decision-making with your principal. Now we're talking about moving it beyond the principal's office and the coach's office and more broadly into the school community so that everybody understands that coaching can be asset-based, student-centered, really about partnering with teachers, all of those things that are at the heart of student-centered coaching. And so we have 4 moves introduced in this part of the resource, and they're really fun because I think they're an opportunity to really truly channel your inner marketing guru. And we all are exposed to marketing every single day in our lives. And we can learn from some of that. For example, this is nothing you have to put in the chat, but just reflect for a second. Who has bought something that you saw marketed on social media recently? And I'm going to raise my hand and claim that to be true for myself. I see these things and I think, I don't really need that. And then I see it 10 more times, 10 different ways. And I start thinking, that might actually meet a need I have. So we're really kind of trying to think about a layered approach instead of just, this is kind of historically how it's looked. Messaging and marketing coaching has been, you can have 10 minutes in our first staff meeting to tell the teachers about what coaching is. And that is all that happens. And then coaches wonder, a few weeks in, why nobody's lining up at their door, wondering when their first coaching cycle is going to start. So we can be so much more creative, deliberate, and clear. Mostly we need to be clear that that's what we're really, that this is what we're here to do. So the first thing is just to plan it, right? To think about how will you organize yourself around that. And in a few minutes towards the end of the webinar, I'll show you a video that is a video that was created by a coach to kind of do this, to explain her work. So that's kind of fun. You'll get to see that. But really coming up with a plan. What are those steps you're going to take? Then also thinking about how are you going to get your principal to advocate for you as a coach? Don't assume that's going to happen. They might not know how to. They might not have thought that it's necessary. And Julie and Leanna and I can all, we can all give so much data around if a principal is truly advocating for coaching and understands, and as Joelle and Killian refers to it, the coach champion, then the momentum starts to shift. If a coach, as Julie says, I love this language you use, Julie, if a coach is trying to hustle for work and trying to drum up business and get people to trust that coaching is a good idea, we're missing a huge piece, which is that principal advocacy. So there's some work to be done there, right? There's this idea of how do you advocate? How often? Where does that show up? Is it a principal newsletter? Is it testimonials from teachers? Is it just reminding teachers on an informal basis of, hey, a coach could help you with that need you just presented, right? So it's continuous. So that piece, don't assume it's going to happen. Principals just have a lot going on and they need to have a thinking partner on this and to serve their coach and coaches if there's more than one well. Engaging in teacher leaders is another move to message and market coaching. This is a little out of the box, but Leanna spoke earlier to the idea of coaching, having a well-rounded coaching roster very early in the year. Why not invite a few teacher leaders onto that coaching roster? Get the teacher of the year involved in a coaching cycle. Get those teachers to maybe we share some strategies for providing feedback to the coach and to the principal about what they're hearing on the street amongst their colleagues. How can we make coaching better? Use teacher leaders in that capacity. So there's a lot we can leverage. I like the idea of kind of a leadership cadre around coaching where it's maybe just, you don't have to meet all the time, but you meet a few times across the year where you ask these teacher leaders to really help make the coaching program better in the school. And then lastly, when you're marketing, a big piece of marketing is listening. Again, a little bit out of the box, right? We don't typically think about marketing as listening, but if you think about back to social media and the advertising world we live in, they're listening to you. I hate to tell you, you probably know this already, but they're listening to you all the time. They're looking at every keystroke. They're looking at what is the interest, where is an opening for us to enter into a conversation about whatever it is. So this really comes from the work of James Flaherty, and he says, first you build relationships, then you listen for openings. And an opening can show up in so many ways. It could be a teacher saying, I'm overwhelmed. That's an opening. It could be a team saying, we hate the fractions unit. That's an opening. It could be a teacher saying, I'm really frustrated with my students' behavior. That's an opening. So having your spidey sense and your radar up constantly. And then the other piece we like to address is not just listening, but responding. So once you hear an opening, how do you transfer that into, it might not be a full cycle, it might be a mini coaching cycle, it might be some lesson planning or some unit planning, but trying to let that teacher who's expressing a need know you're there for them. And we can't sit on that stuff, we have to act. And our quote for this phase of the work is just from one of my favorites. I just watched another interview with Simon Sinek the other day that was so great. But this one is, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So I think that the key here is truly that I love to think about starting with the why. Always starting there when you're thinking about conveying what coaching is. Don't start with the how. Don't start with a coaching cycle is 10, it's 4 to 6 weeks long. We're going to meet this often. It's going to be about this. Always start with the why when you're thinking about messaging and marketing. And then the how comes next. So that's kind of where I'll leave it, and we'll turn it over to Leanna and we'll circle back on this when I share the sample artifact later. But Leanna has some new thinking Julie has some thinking about kind of how to then, as Leanna said earlier, transition us into deeper work, because that's where we are now, which is the exciting part.
I just have to say, if you have not watched Simon Sinek's talk on the golden circle, it's worth the time, but that goes through the why, the what, and the how. So our fourth phase, and I'm not going to say our fourth and final phase because I'll tell you in a minute, but our fourth phase is getting ready for more formal coaching. I don't like to consider it the final phases because all of these things that you're doing in the beginning of the year are not only building up your coaching momentum, but many of the things you will be maintaining throughout the year. Some of the things will drop off as you exit the beginning of the year feel and the school has reached its normal, what Daniel Pink calls flow, and everything's just humming. But many of these things, you'll still be meeting with your principal to talk about the impact of coaching. But we're at the phase now where we want to get into deeper coaching partnerships with teachers. Because at the end of the day, the reason that instructional coaches are in the field, in schools, and in classrooms is to close the achievement gap, to help students achieve the goals that our curriculum has been designed for them to achieve. And so we have to get to deeper coaching partnerships with teachers. This is the important part. And if you are one of those social people that we talked about in the beginning phase, and some of you commented that, yeah, the social part, building those relationships is really fun. We can also get stuck there. And when we get stuck there, we're likely to see less of an impact on student learning and adult learning and building capacity in teachers. So we want to make sure that we're really focused on this idea of after the first 4 to 6 weeks of school, that we are really ready for getting more formal coaching going on in our buildings. So the first move that we want to do in this particular phase is create some type of invitation for teachers in the work. You've heard of the adage, out of sight, out of mind. Teachers are now in their classrooms with students. They're wrestling with all of the things going on in teaching. Designing lessons, dealing with students who have been absent, and just all of the things. So if you are out of sight, even though there may be an opportunity for a coaching opening, if they're not reminded that you are there as a support system, sometimes they forget about that. So we want to think about creating ways for teachers to actually reach out for that support. So that's something that is not just a one and done. You're going to do that throughout the rest of the year, anytime that you're ready to invite additional teachers into coaching partnerships. Another move that we can do to get us more formal coaching is thinking about the different structures that we have to do our coaching work. If you've read any of Diane and Leanna's past work, you read a lot about coaching cycles, and we still believe that coaching cycles is the best way to see the greatest impact on student learning and adult learning. However, I think the pandemic highlighted to us that we had different approaches that we could take with teachers that eventually will lead to coaching cycles. So figuring out the different structures that you might engage with teachers in is a really nice way to just ease your way into more formalized coaching. So think about partnering with teachers while co-planning lessons or co-planning units of instruction, really digging into that clarity work of figuring out what is it that students are supposed to learn, what's that going to look like, and so how do we respond as we develop instructional activities to support that. The 14th move in our resource is planning on how you'll measure your impact. And although we have some formalized tools to do that, there are also some additional ways that we can measure our impact. We are working with human beings, and sometimes we may not realize that the humans that we're working with, so the adults that we're working with, maybe there's something that we have said or done that hasn't really worked out the way that we thought. It can be really valuable to spend some time just surveying teachers after we have partnered with them. That's when you're going to learn the things that they picked up during your coaching partnership. It might reveal some things that, hey, this was really challenging for me. It was overcoming, this piece of instruction or this particular piece of our meeting time or scheduling. That will just help you refine what it is that you put together and offering for teachers down the road. So it's always important to remember to gather feedback, not only formally about student learning and pre and post assessments, but also how has the work that we've been doing with teachers, how is it being received? And are there refinements that we could do to make a better experience for the teachers that we're partnering with? And then finally, this idea of using partnership agreements to set norms with teachers. I'm sure you've all experienced a time where you've signed up for something because the need was just really great, and you were at a place where you just could not wait for the support, and maybe a week passed for the time to actually, for the whatever it was to start, and now you're not feeling it so much. You're a little nervous about inviting another teacher into your classroom. You're worried about maybe what's this going to do to my planning time that I have with my department or my grade level team. Partnership agreements, one of the things that we can do is figure out what is it that you're worried about. And we can dispel any of those maybe misunderstandings about our partnership, or maybe address any of the fears that teachers have. It also allows us to maybe walk into the relationship with a different mindset on where to start. So it really allows us to see a deeper peer into the people that we're going to be working with. But those are all things that we can do to sort of let go of those beginning stages of just being helpful in informal support and partnerships. But now we're really going to dig into that deeper, more long-term coaching impact. So I'd like to share with you this quote from Joyce in Showers and Transfer of Training, the Contribution of Coaching. Transfer of the skills thus acquired into the teacher's active repertoire appears to involve new learning, which requires the addition of a further important step in the training sequence, on-site coaching. It's the on-site coaching, what we believe separates student-centered coaching from a lot of different coaching approaches. It's a long-term professional growth support that our partnership over the course of time really allows teachers to take things that maybe they've heard of or learned of or been trained on in theory, but it allows us to partner side by side with them to see what is going to work with their special group of students and what isn't going to work, and then how do we respond. So this is really a powerful way to exit out of this launching cycle at the beginning of the year. And now you've got the whole rest of the year set up for coaching success.
Thanks, Julie. So I think Melissa also put a link in the chat, excuse me, but we wanted to let you know that, and some of you also asked about when the book is coming. I promise it's coming soon. They're trying to get it out just as quickly as they can if you've done a pre-order. In the meantime, whether you have done that or not, you have access to a couple of sample chapters, as it were, even though it's not technically a book, but we're calling them chapters just because that's what we all know and understand, of 2 different moves to give you a sense of what's in the book, and also so you have a little bit of an extra resource after today. Move number 1 that Julie spoke to us a bit about with regard to being visible and just breaking that down and what that looks like. And also the 5th move that I spoke about, establishing how you work as a principal and coach team. And so you can access it. Like I said, it was shared in the chat. You can go through the slides right here that you have a copy of and hit those links, or if you're getting out your phone and using the QR code right here from the screen, you have different ways to access them. And please know as well that each of these moves has 3 tools at the end that give you some concrete things to help you further explore what this looks like and what you might need to do to be successful in each of these moves. Everything from video clips to samples of different things to actual tools with language in them or agendas and things that you might want to use. So really a lot of resource there for you. We encourage you to pull these up and dig deeper. And those of you who are waiting on the book, this will at least give you something to dig into in the meantime. So please, like we said, enjoy digging into these and knowing that they're here for you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diane, who's going to talk to us about one more tool.
Yeah, I just thought it would be fun. We'll get to some Q&A and the winners in a second here, but just to lead to a little inspiring, just an example of one of our tools is a launching video. And this is a coach who wanted to help her school reimagine what coaching could be. And so we'll just go ahead and play this through. It's just 3 minutes long, and just use this as hopefully a source of inspiration as you're digging into the work. And she does mention COVID, but next year her video won't, hopefully. So here, whoops, let me go back. I just advanced without getting right. Here we go. Oh, keeps it. Let's go through. So for some reason it's advancing on me. We'll go this way. Different way in. Here we go.
Let's take a moment to reimagine instructional coaching in the GWA Upper School. Let's dream big. Students who are lifelong learners pursuing excellence and modeling integrity. And we know that teacher quality is the variable most strongly related to student achievement. So what if the vision for our coaching at GWA was to directly impact student learning while increasing collective efficacy and teaching practice among our teachers? What if we had ways to show the effect of coaching on student learning? How would this dream become a reality? First, we would clarify the vision, the coach's role, and the coaching model that we want to put into place. We would honor teachers by giving them autonomy, choice, and ownership in the learning process. And we would create structures and norms for evaluating the impact of coaching on teaching and learning so that we can celebrate together with teachers and staff. What would this look like in reality? Well, it would involve creating coaching cycles where the coach and teachers would set goals based on standards, clarify learning targets to be made into objectives, and pre-assess students to inform our instruction and co-plan and co-teach together. Within this process, we would be modeling SIOP's review and assessment component. How how to use data-informed instruction, and how teacher reflection can inform their instruction. We would work on instructional strategies to help our students reach their learning goal. It would also look like coaching being part of a professional development ecosystem, partnering with principals to meet big goals. Principals and coach would meet weekly. They would think about how to market coaching to teachers and brainstorm next steps together for professional development. And I know you're thinking, but what if we're online? That's the beauty of this vision. Coaching can still be a tool for growth online by simply adjusting what co-planning and co-teaching look like. Imagine teachers working through cycles of collecting data to inform their online instruction creation as well, and to help kids reach their learning goals. This vision is real and it is possible. Partnering together, principals and coach can reimagine and redefine what coaching means at GWA to have a greater impact on student learning.
So fun. Isn't that an awesome example of a launching artifact, which this was created by a student in one of my, in my course at Wisconsin-Madison. So let me get back to our presentation, and we're going to see, let's see what's in the chat. I don't know if we have any yet. Oh, here's one. Diane Murphy, and anybody can fire off on this, Leanna or Julie. What suggestions do you have for district level coaches that work with 20 plus schools and 700 plus teachers? We're laughing because this is always a hard question, because there's a lot of empathy in this question. And so the chuckling is not laughing at the question, it's the resource being stretched so thin is so hard. What do you guys think?
I'll jump in, and Diane's right. We did all laugh because we're like, oh yeah, this is a tough one. But I think especially as it pertains to launching, in as much as you can, some of those things are the same. But asking yourself through your lens. So how am I going to build relationships with that many teachers? Is it possible to build relationships with all of them in a deep and meaningful way? Or do I focus on certain, cohorts or clumps or schools, however you want to define that at a time? With that many principals, are you able to establish roles, or is there a way to do that kind of whole group? I don't know. Do you as district level coaches have time with the principals where you could do some of that work together? I think being a district level coach really forces you to think outside the box and think of how to get the most bang for your buck. So I would say that philosophically, not to try to make it too simple, because it's very complex, but maybe starting with some of these moves and saying, okay, what's going to look different for me? And how can I find avenues to, like I said, group people together, group schools together, so I can do some of this work, but not thinking of each individual teacher or even each individual school all at once. Mm-hmm. Either of you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I want to add on another question to connect that Megan Moeller asked. What advice do you have for a district-wide coach serving multiple buildings? Which I think is similar, but I think Julie's had some experience with this role.
Yeah, so I think my first question for both of those people who submitted those questions is, are there building level coaches? Because if there are, I think you can also partner with them. I served as a district level coach, and over the course of the years that I did it, there were some years that I spent just a lot more time at the buildings who reached out and had the need. And developed some really strong partnerships, not only with the teachers on those staffs, but the principal as well. And so then that principal got really comfortable reaching out to me. So developing the relationships when you're at a district position is going to take longer. and I mean like more over a span of a few years as you get more contact with the principal and the teachers. So finding opportunities to do that, whether that's delivering PD or offering some professional development opportunities in the terms of graduate courses or something, just to get your face out there and visibility. If there's an initiative that your district has undertaken, is there a way that you can support buildings and with a better understanding of that initiative? I think that will get your visibility at the beginning of the school year out there. Those are just kind of some thoughts that I have. I think as a district level coach, you have to understand that you're probably not going to engage in as many deep, full coaching cycles as someone who's on site because you're spread so thin. So think about leveraging some of the other structures, planning at the unit or lesson level, and then mini coaching cycles where it's a shorter term. I think that's probably a better entry point for district level coaches.
And maybe another one would be being a thinking partner with a principal in the school.
Yeah, definitely.
On their vision. That's a role when I was across 4 schools, I played quite a lot. Awesome. I'll tackle this one. Our district has been trained by Jim Knight in the impact cycle. However, after reading student-centered coaching, this resonates with me as a coach. Any advice on how to combine these coaching styles? I'm also a coach in 2 buildings, so time is split. And I think if I were to say, probably one of the big overlaps between the impact cycle and our version of coaching cycles is the better conversations part of the work. So really quality listening, quality conversations, the partnership principles, the empathy, all of that. The structures are so different that I don't think they can really be combined. So just to be honest, the purpose for an impact cycle is very discreetly on changing teacher behavior as it relates to instruction. And the purpose of a student-centered coaching cycle is more about supporting student learning and teacher growth at the same time. So it's just a different purpose, really, which means that the structure aligns with the purpose, which means it would be really hard to combine those two. But I do think the overlap is really in the partnership side of things. And then, being in 2 schools isn't so bad. I think you can leverage that quite a lot. We have some examples of how to schedule across 2 schools in this resource. I think you have to partner with 2 sets of principals, and there's definitely some barriers, but we see coaches successful in 2 schools quite a lot. It's going to feel very different from school to school. They're never going to be on the same pace or have the same energy, but it can work for sure.
Can I tackle a question, Diane?
Please, just share it.
Yep. For our secondary folks out there, Elizabeth Soder asked if we have any advice for high school or secondary coaches, how to help colleagues understand that I, as the coach, can help impact learning in their classrooms when I may not have their content expertise. So Elizabeth, thank you for posting that, because this is a really common one. And I think as we're thinking about that question in the context of how to successfully launch the year, what can we do at the very beginning to get ourselves on the right foot with this one? It goes to me a lot to the messaging and marketing. How are we getting across to teachers who may have experienced coaching in different ways in the past that we're not the experts on all things as coaches, but we're partners? And part of that partnership means that we value the expertise that our colleagues bring to the table too. We both have lots of experience and expertise. So you may know everything there is to know about high school chemistry. I don't really know anything about it, but here's what I can bring to the partnership. And together we can create some really fabulous learning opportunities for our students. So getting that out, that kind of messaging out early, that our job as coaches isn't to be the know-it-all and come in with all the answers, and nor is it to tell you what to do. But our job really is, as student-centered coaches, to be a partner. And so if we can get that out in our messaging, I think that starts to shift people's mindsets early on in the process to help them understand that this may be different than what they've understood coaching to be in the past.
Yeah. I'm going to, since we're close on time, I'm going to direct anybody who's still in the group that I added a link to our Facebook group. It's a community where you can post questions and we'll respond to those questions. So if you are not able to get your question addressed today, just throw it in there. That's what we hope would happen in that Facebook group. It's all about responding to questions. So I can just scrolling through, I just know we can't probably get to all these today, which is hard to wrap your head around because we always want lots of good questions. So I already see people joining. So yay, just click right in there. If you're not a Facebook user, we're on Twitter. You can see our hashtags here on our name badges. There's lots of opportunities to keep the conversation going. You can go to dianesweeney.com. There's blog posts. There's a podcast link. There's all kinds of information out there. So I just want to honor that we are at the hour, we have hit an hour. So Melissa, do you want to take over?
Thank you all so much for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great school year.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.